Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we empower tomorrow's leaders through the sharing of knowledge, experience, and inspiring stories. I'm your host, Rob Kamranpoor, an engineer, entrepreneur, and someone who spent the better part of the 2 decades asking a question: what does it actually take to lead well? Today, we've started and launched the RK Leadership Academy, and from a simple belief that great leadership isn't reserved for the corner office. It lives in every team meeting, every difficult conversation, and every moment you choose to show up for the people counting on you. The Academy exists to give professionals at every stage, from emerging leaders finding their footing to seasoned executives redefining their impact, the framework, the coaching, and the community to lead with purpose, clarity, and integrity. Whether you're leading a team of 2 or an organization of 2,000, the principles are all the same. Know yourself, communicate honestly, and never stop growing. Today's episode is a special one. We're bringing together 3 extraordinary voices, each master of a different dimension of leadership, to give you a 360-degree view of what it means to lead at your best. Coach Pete joins us to explore the world of performance and self-regulation and what it takes to lead under pressure without losing yourself in the process. Chantel brings deep expertise in communication and relationships, because how you speak, listen, and connect is the invisible architecture every high-performing team requires. And Dr. Jacqueline, one of the most thoughtful voices on empathy in leadership, is here to challenge everything you think you know about leading with heart. So without any further ado, let's get into the real conversation, folks. Why don't we open up with a question for each one of you guys? Can you share in one word what defines lead? Let's do that again. This is winging it.
It's all good, man. Let's do this.
It's been a while. All right. Let's open with each of you sharing one word that defines leadership for you and the story behind why that word. So why don't we start with you, Jackie?
I would have to say the obvious word for me would probably have to be empathy, primarily because I dedicated a lot of my life to studying how empathy works and how through empathy we can build more sustainable relationships.
Amazing. Chantel?
Oh, ladies first.
Yeah, ladies first. That'll be a gentleman.
Okay, I'm going to cheat. I have 2 words. So I'm going to say being open and curious, because I feel that in the workforce, as people come together that come from different walks of lives, different forms of education, different levels of management, if you're not open and curious to understand why people show up the way they do or not, why they perform the way they do or not, it just leaves room for conflict. So I think it's really important to, instead of getting defensive, instead of getting mad why things are not happening the way you require them to be, to understand how are people thinking around you that work. So getting inquisitive and trying to understand. So for me, that comes with like being curious and asking questions and being open about doing things differently than maybe you would have wanted to bring it to the table.
Amazing. Thank you. And last but not least, Pete.
And I'm going to take from Chantel, and I'm going to use 2 words as well. And I'm going to go with composure and adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
Because in leadership, when pressure hits, if you're not composed, wrong decisions are made. There's
right.
Outlashing. There's a whole bunch of different things. And then in order to be composed and then go through with adapting, changing your plan on the dime. But you have to be, once again, composed before you can make the decision to do that.
Absolutely. Take us back to the moment you realized your specific lens, whether it was performance, communication, or empathy. And what was the key to unlocking growth in the people around you?
It's actually, for me, when I'm instructing, it's trust. It's placing trust in others. And then when doing that and being, showing leadership myself, and then them following and trusting that they will do the right thing or train on their own when I ask them to, like all these things. It's a back and forth sort of things. I show trust, they show trust. And in that, I think that's where it all comes from.
So I'm going to ask
That's the
you,
question.
I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, Pete. When you talk about trust, now, again, for a young leader that's starting the role, do you start by giving trust, or is the trust built over time?
Giving trust, because you show it by example, and then they reciprocate that.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, how did empathy impact the people around you? So when did you realize that empathy was impacting the people around you?
I would say absolutely. I mean, it started when I first did my dissertation on choosing the topic of empathy. And it really started to affect people around me when I actually started to emulate and practice the things that I was researching, where I was starting to actually turn inward and become more self-aware, and to actually start asking myself some really important questions, such as like, what was coming up for me? What was I feeling in that particular moment? And also really getting curious as to, why I was feeling these emotions. And secondly, not only being able to be curious and to be self-aware, but now I was actually putting this into practice, especially with the people around me. And it was kind of like a ripple effect where they would see me do something and then they would want to automatically, it was like a contagious element that they automatically wanted to kind of mimic what I was doing. So it's definitely a rewarding experience.
Amazing. So I've got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
With respect to empathy, again, as a young leader stepping into a new role, is it more important to have empathy for yourself first or other people?
I think I would answer that question where empathy would be most served if we have it for ourselves first. We can't really have true empathy for someone else if we don't show that to ourselves first. So it needs to start with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Love that.
Now, communication.
Well, for me, it definitely started on a personal note where it was something I had decided to learn and really dive deeply into it. In my personal relationships, which tended to fail and not work out. So I had made the choice to improve. I, believe it or not, was the worst communicator in the world. I did not know how to express myself. And when I did, I, completely lose it and get emotionally triggered. So a lot of what I did want to say did not come out the right way. So when I met my partner that I'm with right now, we had both really worked on that and incorporating the skill. And I saw the difference that it made, not only in our relationship dynamic, but then I started integrating that with my friends, with family members, and at work. And I saw the difference that it creates. And it only takes one person to create change. We forget that, right?
Yes.
So if someone feels, because when we're trying to communicate, obviously we want to feel heard, we want to feel acknowledged. And I think that when we're able to make room for someone to feel that, oh, this person is actually paying attention to me, they're actually listening to what I'm saying, they're actually interested to what I have to say, it just creates a very different, I would say, trust, because they feel safe. They feel safe to express themselves and they feel important. I think that who doesn't want to feel that they matter at the end of the day?
That's right. So I'm going to ask you a follow-up question too, Chantel. You're now a new coach leading a sports team.
Mm-hmm.
What part of communication is the most important as a coach?
Oh, that's a great question. I think so most people could say like it's about how you actually say things, but saying things don't matter until you make sure that the person that is receiving the message actually understands. So when we're talking about communication and saying something, I think as a coach, it's really important to be able to do the follow-up question. What did you understand? What are you getting? Are you understanding what I'm actually asking, giving as a direction? So it's making sure it's not just about you passing on a message, but making sure that the message is received from the person that you're talking to.
That's right. Awesome. Right. I'm going to turn it to you, Pete, now. Self-regulation is talked about a lot, but rarely taught. What does it actually look like when a leader loses regulation under pressure, And what's the real cost to their team?
Usually they're lashing out, they blame, they don't take responsibility for what's going on. Now, leading a team, yes, there's varying components to it. Yes, someone could have made a mistake under lower than them, but it's their responsibility still to make sure everything's running smoothly. And
That's
to
right.
take that responsibility is the first, the big step in, I believe, all leadership, right? So for me, for example, if I have someone that isn't learning what I'm teaching, I can't say it's them. I have to find a different way to teach them.
Amazing.
Right?
So leaders often think they communicate well and their teams disagree. Where's the biggest breakdown and why is it so hard for leaders to see it in themselves?
So when we're talking about making sure that leaders and teams stay together and communicate properly, as a leader, it's really important to be able to let go of your ego and be able to really not feel attacked, not feel like, oh my God, I'm not going to look as high in the chain as I'm supposed to be. It's not about that. It's making sure that you have clear communication and that you both are at the end of the day, a good leader is making sure your team is all on the same page.
That's right.
So do not be defensive when people are not understanding. I would invite leaders to be curious, have fun, and make sure that there's an interactive conversation always to be said. And I think a lot of leaders are not open to hearing feedback or asking questions to make sure the other person understands things the way you think they want to be communicated. Because we also think, as I said, that we're great communicators, but everybody comes from different backgrounds.
That's
everybody has been educated differently. Everybody is completely different. For us to make assumptions that people think the way we do and process the way we do is completely wrong. So that's why I invite leaders to be a little bit more open and ask questions on how their team members need either to be given instructions, talked to, motivated, whatever it is that you need your team to be doing.
Thank you. Awesome. So I'm going to turn it to you, Jackie. Empathy is one of the most cited leadership qualities and one of the most misunderstood. How do you define empathy in leadership context, and what does it truly require?
I would say that most people would define empathy as an emotion. I argue that empathy is not an emotion, but rather a process, something that can be repeated and practiced daily. And also, I would have to say, a lot of the times, leaders in particular, or individuals in particular, have to understand that when stressful situations occur or when they arise, our emotional brain reacts first and our thinking brain reacts secondly.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be cognizant of the fact that these emotions are going to surface, but now how do we understand them and how do we deal with those emotions? We need to be able to reflect and not react. And the only way that we can do that is being able to actually name what feelings are coming up for us.
Mm-hmm.
We can't change what we first don't recognize. So that would be the first part of my process of empathy. Secondly, it would kind of tie back into what Chantel was talking about earlier in regards to really getting curious and having a different perspective on not only what's coming up for me as an individual personally. I really want to try to get curious and gather more information without judgment, but rather also not be so quick to jump and judge other people, but rather try to understand by gathering more information where that person's coming from. And lastly, it's what I call the action-oriented disposition response, which is now, how am I going to show up? How am I going to act with intention rather than reaction?
Awesome. I'm going to ask you a question regarding, again, the empathy, the emotions. One of the things, again, if you look at a leader, a coach, whatever it may be, somebody that's leading a large team or coaching a team, in my past, I find that it's so important to be able to control your emotions in certain settings and times. Again, what is your advice to the younger generation getting into leadership, or again, a new coach on a team? How do you regulate your emotion? How do you control your emotion when something, when there's a crisis, like on your team or on the team with a sports factor or?
Well, I think the most important thing is, like I said earlier, it's just being able to recognize what's coming up for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that emotion, I guess that anger, let's use anger for an example. Let's say when anger kind of comes in,
Yeah,
we need to take a deep breath, be able to recognize, okay, ask yourself, why is this anger coming? What's triggering this? Is it something from my past? Is it something? I just need to get a little bit more curious and dig a little bit deeper as to why this emotion is coming up. But I think the most important advice that I could give is that you need to be able to say, it's okay that I'm feeling this. I have to be able to recognize without judgment that it's okay that I'm feeling this. I'm going to allow myself to feel this emotion. And then I'm going to be able to process it in such a way that I'm going to take a step back, realize what's coming up for me, and then react accordingly. I think a lot of the time, the issue is that we just, like I said earlier, our emotional brain just goes, whoa,
Yeah.
I'm just going to lash out at this person because I'm angry. But we never just do that first step where we kind of just calm down, take a breath, relax, and say to ourselves, okay, I'm feeling this way for a reason. And now let me try and approach the situation from a more empathetic or emotionally intelligent standpoint.
Do you believe that people can get to that state after a certain amount of time of maybe practice and self-awareness?
100%. I mean, empathy, like I said, it's a repeatable, teachable tool.
Perfect.
And everything requires repetition. Again, it's what Chantel was saying. It's all about repeating. And like anything else in life, once we keep repeating something, it's just going to become second nature to us.
Awesome. Thank you. Back to you, Pete. What are the most effective practices you use to help leaders build sustainable self-regulation, not just managing their temper, but regulating at a deeper level?
So, piggybacking off of what Dr. Jacqueline said is when it comes to that, like these things come up in your body, like emotions. And the first thing to do is be aware of it. Be aware of your body where tension builds, where maybe you have butterflies in your stomach. Maybe it's you shake. Everyone, like when I say shake, like a nervous shake. Now, everyone has something different that comes up in their body. And to be able to realize that and then breathe through it is important. Now, there's a couple of things also that go along with it is trauma builds up, and there's different pieces of like almost getting into a car accident is trauma, right? And that builds up this adrenaline in your body, and
That's
you don't release it. And then you go on to the next thing, and it's someone was late with an assignment, and now you're angry because it looks bad on you, and that builds up on that. Now, if you had got out of that situation with the car accident and like shaked, jumped, worked out, hugged the loved one, that would dissipate that feeling. And then it wouldn't be carried on to the next thing. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is they're carrying those stuff physically in them into the next situation.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Chantel, this is a topic that a lot of leaders deal with on a regular basis. It happens again, whether on the field or in an organization. We call it difficult conversations, giving critical feedback, addressing conflict, delivering bad news. What's the communication approach you rely on most in those moments?
It's a couple of things. First off, I want to say that kind of to reiterate because a lot of what we're already talking about, they go all hand in hand. I think of a lot of what Coach Pete talks about and what Dr. Jacqueline talks about when it comes to emotional regulation, when it comes to empathy, it really makes a difference on how you're going to be successful in communication or not. So number one, it's like, are you self-aware enough of why you're reactive and getting triggered the way you do? If most people are not very self-aware. So it's really hard to be able to explain the why behind something that happens if you don't take time to get inquisitive and really understand who you are. Why do things matter to you? Why do things need to be delivered a certain way? Why do you need to control this? Why do you want to have it this way? So it's important to get inquisitive and really dive deep into that. Once you have the reason, then it gets easier to communicate, and you can be very solid in your communication because you did the work of being able to explain the real why, not the maybe why, the fake why. It's like, no, I'm very certain of this. And I think that's a step that people don't take the time to think about. Number two, when we go a little bit deeper into self-awareness, it's like, am I being egotistical? I talk about how relationships are threesomes. It's you, the person in front of you. It might be your team. It might be your wife. It might be your husband. It might be your coworker, your boss, whatever that is, where a relationship is with another person. And the relationship has an entity of its own. So it's always about thinking and creating this inner chat of like, if my reaction, if my comment, is my ego, is the need of being right going to service this relationship right now? If people were able to ask themselves that question when they're being in a confrontational situation, I would say 98.5% of the time, you're like, why am I even going to try to have this conversation? And when we're talking about confronting conflict or hard conversations, a lot of the times, the hard conversations are not really hard. It's that we're so afraid of how we're going to hurt the other person.
Yes.
What is that person going to think? And again, we're making assumptions. So if you are practicing empathy and kindness and being thoughtful, it's all about how you approach the message, right? And how you deliver it. That can make a big difference. And then it's all about having an exchange instead of having it to be a one-way street. And again, I'll repeat, getting curious, being open. Why are you feeling this way? Why is this important to you? Tell me more. I'd like to understand versus, there's a big difference between like, you were late and I don't want you to be late anymore. Well, why don't you want me to be late? Well, this is why. It has an impact on the team. It has an impact on everything else that's supposed to be delivered. So that's why it's really important to understand why a thing matters to you when you're dealing with a confrontational conversation.
I love how you stated that, Chantel, because one of the things I always challenge is why do we call it difficult conversations? Because when you start calling it difficult conversation, the minute you walk into it, both guards are up. And now you're creating a lot of tension between the two individuals. And you don't even know what the outcome is going to be. So it might not be a difficult conversation. It's just communication.
Yeah, and a hard conversation actually, or like when you say that, it's like, it's only hard because people don't know how to manage the conflict.
Right.
That's
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
So when you have the tools to manage conflict, it's actually quite easy. Yes, it can be like a little, okay, we're going to have a little bit of a harsh one-on-one here, but it's just actually how you choose to manage it. And people are not used to it. That's it. They don't have the toolbox for it.
That's right. Back to you, Dr. Jacqueline. So what's the organizational cost in real measurable terms when leaders lack empathy, and what changes when empathy becomes a cultural norm?
I've definitely seen it firsthand, especially with my research on empathy and my work in academia, that institutions function much better when empathy is at the forefront.
Awesome. Thank you. It definitely increases engagement as well. Okay. So before we end this podcast, I'm going to ask you guys each the same question, and you can, provide your answers as best as you like. So when we created the RK Leadership Academy, I want you guys to tell the audience and the world out there why you decided to partake in this program and what it means to you.
So for me, when I think about the experience I've had in martial arts and training fighters, fighting myself, and the composure that it takes to go through these things, the discipline it takes for training, all of these things, even like going in and training with certain people, going to different fights, there's all these aspects that come together that make that person almost unshakable. And when they apply the principles of martial arts to other parts in their lives, it ends up benefiting them. So what I wanted to do was take these principles, and I've made these pillars that I created that I teach leaders how to use these things in their daily lives, not only in business, but at home with their families, on the streets, wherever they need to, because composure, adaptability, integrity, all that stuff doesn't belong in one place.
Absolutely.
It belongs through your whole life.
Amazing. Thank you. Who's next?
I'll give Jackie a break. So I have been fascinated and studying the human behavior aspect of things since my early 20s. And it's something that I'm extremely passionate about. And I've seen over the last couple years with how social media has been integrated in our lives and just this fast pace. And now it's AI, which is things are just moving to a whole other pace that we can't even imagine how fast things are coming to us.
That's right.
The human connection of us as humans has never been more important. Now, all companies are talking about the mental health crisis, the loneliness epidemic. But what I've noticed is that we're all talking about it, and a lot of companies as well are checking things off the list without making sure that it's actually integrated as a company culture in it. There's a big difference between learning and actually integrating the work. And I love that what we wanted to do as a team is not just come in and teach, not just come in and share the information. It's how are you really going to make sure that as a leader, you're honoring you're passing it on and it's integrated and embodied in your team. It's the only way it can happen. So I saw it even in my personal business working with clients is that we consume, but then we don't do the work. And as human, change is the hardest thing to do, setting a new habit. And we can talk things like self-awareness, taking a pause, breath work, breathing, taking the time to slow down. There's such simple things, but they're the hardest things to do. And it's a muscle that we need to develop. So that's why I'm excited to be part of this because we don't want to be another company that's teaching something and checking it off the list. Thank you very much for showing up. We've taken that. No, we want to make sure and hold your hand and take you from A to Z to make sure that it actually integrates as culture in your company. So thank you, Rob. Very happy to be part of this team.
Amazing. Thank you.
Well, I would definitely say that I dedicated so many years in academia, and even though I was making a really thoughtful difference with my students, I just felt like there was this inclination that I needed to do more. I needed to step away from theory, and I wanted to actually put things into practice. So what better way to do that than to formulate this amazing team where we can actually make a huge impact.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, saying, oh, we need to make change. We're actually trying to make this change. And we are, like Chantel was saying, that we're actually going in and we're teaching everyone these practical tools and we're going to walk with them. It's not just, you look at some modules and you take some courses and, you forget about the information, but we're actually going to be walking with each of you to guide you through making lasting change.
Personalized experience.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So before we end the show, Pete, you had
I have
a question for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in your leadership journey, what would you say the impact is of the three pillars that we stand plus yours, like leadership intelligence? So empathy, self-regulation, communication, how does that affect leadership intelligence?
Great question, Pete. So the way I would answer that is in leadership, you have to be well-rounded. You cannot just be a good communicator or just have empathy or learn how to regulate yourself or, be technical. In leadership, it's so important to be well-rounded because you're dealing with various individuals with different characters, cultures, backgrounds, sexes. And when it comes to that situation of leadership, And when you're dealing with the different people, that's where you get to, put that trait in place. So that's where the emotional intelligence comes in. When do I have to be empathetic? When do I have to self-regulate? And when do I need to listen? You need to be a good listener. For me, that the part of the communication is I have to be a good listener to have empathy, right? And at the same time, when I'm taking it all in, I have to be able to compose myself, because the other person can be, going off the wire, and that's where everything kind of comes in together. And throughout my career and my journey, I've learned a little bit of everything. And it's beautiful where I get to now work with the three of you, and I get to even learn further. For me, I never stop learning. And I think what you guys are offering to everyone out there is incredible. And I would have loved to have this kind of program when I was growing up in my journey. So it's super important for the folks that are becoming new leaders or are already in leadership roles, transitioning or feel stuck, to go through this program, because you're going to learn a lot from it. Hope that answers your question.
It does. And thank you for bringing us together for this.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've come to the end of our segment and our episode. For all those listening, thank you so much for joining us in this different episode that we had than your usual RK Leadership podcast. For anyone that has questions out there, drop it in the box below. I'll make sure that if it's, if the question is asked to anyone in particular, I'll get them to answer it, or we'll be able to answer you as a team. Looking forward to more episodes with the three of you when we can talk further when we're in the next milestone in our journey. Thanks, everyone, and see you in the next episode.